Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you our predictions for the 5 biggest games of Week 8. And unlike last week, we did not struggle to find 5 huge marquee matchups to talk about for this weekend. Last week, we only had 1 ranked versus ranked matchup. This week, we have 4. The Big Ten is back in action. We have 2 major Big Ten conference games up here on the board this week. And of course, there are plenty of other huge Big Ten games and plenty of other huge games that will be taking place across the country as well. We just think these are the 5 biggest ones and the 5 games that have the biggest implications going into Week 8 of college football. You know, the season is going by so fast, but yet at the same time, things are really starting to heat up. So let's go ahead and take a look at the games that we have for this week. The 5 biggest games. We're going to start in the ACC with an in-state matchup, an in-state rivalry matchup between North Carolina State and North Carolina. Now, this is an interesting game for many reasons. First off, let's start with NC State. They're 4-1. If you had told me 5-6 weeks ago that NC State would be 4-1 and 23rd in the country going into Week 8 of the season, I would have said you were crazy. Because we knew that NC State was going to improve this season. They had a very disappointing 2019. But 4-1, top 25 caliber, never even crossed my mind. North Carolina, on the other hand, they were the 5th ranked team in the country last week. Number 5 in the country. And then they went on the road and lost to Florida State. The Seminoles, who were 1-3 at the time, they fell to them in Tallahassee, 31-28, dropping from 5th all the way down to 14th. So very interesting matchup here. And the major storyline that I have going into this one is 2 things. First, how does North Carolina respond following that heartbreaking loss? Their ACC title hopes are still intact. That was just 1 conference loss. They are still in a position to get to that championship game to take on Clemson. So how do they respond? And how does North Carolina State respond after losing their star quarterback in Devin Leary, who has a broken fibula and will miss 4 to 8 weeks with the Wolfpack? Leary, I didn't like him much last year. Thought he was a major disappointment last year. He took a major step forward in 2020. He's thrown for 879 yards, 8 touchdowns, and just 2 interceptions this season. And I was devastated, and I hated to see him get injured like that in last week's win over Duke. So in North Carolina, will they be able to bounce back? Will North Carolina State be able to get the job done with Bailey Hockman, the backup QB, the guy that led North Carolina State to victory in their season opener against Wake Forest? So Hockman does have experience in that opener. He did have experience and got some playing time this past week when Leary went out with an injury. So all of those things combined, how's that going to factor into this game? And the funny thing is, it's not really, to me, going to come down to offense in this game. It's going to come down to defense. When you look at these 2 teams, they both have very good rushing attacks. Very good rushing attacks. But North Carolina, I think, owns that slight edge. When you look at the defensive numbers when they're going up against the run, they're just about dead even. NC State allowing 153.2 rushing yards per game. North Carolina allowing 152.3 rushing yards per game. But again, Sam Howell, he struggled a little bit this year. He might be hitting that sophomore slump. North Carolina rushed for 184 yards last week against Florida State. They rushed for 400 yards the week before against Virginia Tech. They're averaging 229.8 rushing yards per game so far this season. I think their rushing attack goes wild against a Wolfpack team whose defense is going to be out on the field quite a bit as they struggle a little bit offensively. You factor in Leary's out, slight home field advantage for the Tar Heels. I think North Carolina gets the job done at home. North Carolina State has dominated this series, winning 6 of the past 10 against the Tar Heels. Mack Brown and his squad looking to change that a little bit to get their 2nd straight victory in this series. Moving on down to the Big 12, we have a huge matchup here. This is one of the more, in my opinion, underrated games of Week 8. 17th ranked Iowa State traveling to Stillwater to take on the 6th ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys. These 2 teams are 2 of the 3 teams that are undefeated in conference play right now. Who would have thought that? Maybe Oklahoma State, maybe Iowa State, but Texas not undefeated in conference play. Oklahoma not undefeated. Baylor not undefeated. It's Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. Those are your three teams sitting atop the Big 12 standings right now. So this game is huge, and maybe trying to find a little separation for either team into getting into that Big 12 championship game. So let's look at some numbers here. Oklahoma State has won 7 of the last 8 games against the Cyclones. But the past 5 games against Iowa State have all been decided by 1 possession. Sometimes not even by a full touchdown. 7 of the last 8 they've won 5 by 1 possession. That includes last year's 34-27 upset victory for the Cowboys in Ames, defeating the Cyclones by 7. A major storyline you want to watch on this one is, will Spencer Sanders be back at quarterback for the Cowboys? Remember, he got hurt in that season opener against Tulsa, has not seen the field since. Oklahoma State, they did not play last week against Baylor, so they've had a lot of time to rest, and they thought that prior to that, Sanders could have been ready to go. So what will Mike Gundy do? Will he go with the dual-threat quarterback and Sanders? Will he stick with Shane Illingworth, who has thrown for 483 yards and 3 touchdowns in his replacement? What is the quarterback situation going to be like on Saturday afternoon in Stillwater? That's going to be the first question here. Iowa State, they've looked like a very different team ever since they lost to Louisiana. They beat TCU. They got that signature win over Oklahoma. They got a very solid win against a decent Texas Tech squad in Ames. They're averaging 29.8 points per game, and Brock Purdy was a guy that we criticized early in the year. He's answered the call now, though. 912 yards, 4 touchdowns this season. And the rushing game for the Cyclones, been a pleasant surprise. Breece Hall leading the way with 531 yards and 8 touchdowns. So Breece Hall really helping out Brock Purdy in this passing attack, making sure he knows he doesn't have to do it all by himself. The ironic thing in the Big 12, as wild as the conference has been, in years past, neither team, or really the conference as a whole, has been known for defense. And yet here we are. We've got 2 solid defenses here, especially against the run, each team allowing under 100 rushing yards per game. Oklahoma State, though, they own the major defensive edge. They're allowing just 9 points per game this season. They're allowing just 93.7 rushing yards per game this season. And I look at that. If you shut down Breece Hall for Oklahoma State, can Brock Purdy come on the road and get it done by himself? Right now I'm saying no. I like this Oklahoma State defense a lot. I like they've got a lot of rest coming in. I know Iowa State does too. Oklahoma State a little bit more. And they've got so much offensive talent there as well. Chuba Hubbard, one of the best running backs in the country. Tylan Wallace, one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten. It doesn't matter who's throwing to them. They're going to make some big plays. I think Oklahoma State wins this game in another close one. It will be decided by 1 possession, but they give the Cyclones their first conference loss of the year. But Iowa State's title hopes still not fully dashed. Moving on to the Big Ten. Number 8, Penn State at Indiana. Many will look at this and say, why is this a big game up here? Why do you have Penn State and Indiana? Why not Nebraska, Ohio State? Not that one, because I think we all know how that game's going to play out. We don't necessarily know how Penn State and Indiana is going to play out. The last 2 games between the Nittany Lions and the Hoosiers has been decided by a combined 12 points. 12 points. A 7-point victory for Penn State last year at home. A 5-point victory for Penn State the year before. So Indiana's given Penn State a handful of fights over these past few seasons, and you can expect another one on Saturday afternoon. You can expect another close game. The crazy thing about this college football season is we don't know how teams are going to look in their first games. You know, it's towards the end of October, and the Big Ten and these teams are playing in their first game of the year. We haven't seen them in action since December or January when each of these teams played in their bowl games. So that's something that's kind of may be a major storyline for every Big Ten program this weekend. But you look at Indiana. This is one of the most talented Hoosiers football teams that we've seen in a long, long time. Many are calling it the best Indiana football team in history. 17 returning starters. A great, dangerous, dual-threat QB in Michael Penix. You've got Stevie Scott, your running back, returning. You've got your best wide receiver returning, and Whop Phillier. And you've got 9 starters coming back on defense, a unit that allowed just 24.4 points per game last year. All of those things combined, guys, this is an Indiana team that could scare and win a lot of games this year. Penn State, defensively, Maybe they take a step back, maybe they don't, but they lose their best defensive playmaker, their leader on defense, and linebacker Micah Parsons, who many thought was the best linebacker in the country going into this season. He's choosing to opt out. And even though the Big Ten decided to come back and play, he remained opting out. He continued to opt out, focusing solely on the NFL. So he's not going to be back. So that's a little bit concerning for the Penn State defense going up against such a high-powered Indiana offense. Thing is, Penn State's got a heck of an offense himself. Quarterback Sean Clifford is back. They've got two great running backs in Journey Brown and Noah Cain. And they've got arguably one of, I don't know if he's better than Kyle Pitts right now, but one of the best tight ends in the country in Pat Freiermuth. So he returns, and this Penn State offense should be clicking on all cylinders despite the long break. We talked about Indiana's defense. We talked about Penn State's defense. Who might own the edge there? Indiana, in my opinion, certainly having more experience. But when you look at Penn State, 5th in the nation last year in rushing defense. They led the nation with 22 forced fumbles. The problem is they were 100th in the nation when it came to passing defense. So this is a game that will be decided by two things: whether Indiana can throw the ball against this weaker Penn State secondary, and whether Penn State can run the ball with Journey Brown and Noah Cain against an Indiana defense that allowed 138.8 rushing yards per game. Who has the most success offensively against the two weaknesses on each defense? I'm going with the Nittany Lions. I like James Franklin. I like this rushing attack a lot for Penn State. I think they wear down Indiana enough to open up the passing game for Sean Clifford and a core of relatively inexperienced wide receivers. The Nittany Lions come in and survive a scare against the Hoosiers, who are getting there, but just not quite to the point where they're able to take down the Big Ten elites. Moving on to another Big Ten game, the game of the week. We've got analysis on this game coming out tomorrow, deeper in-depth analysis, so make sure not to miss it. This is the site of College Game Day. Number 18, Michigan, traveling to number 21, Minnesota. And I just want to say that I think Minnesota has been severely disrespected when it comes to the rankings. This is a team that won 11 games last year. A team that returns their star quarterback in Tanner Morgan, returns their great head coach in PJ Fleck, returns with Rashad Bateman, who opted out, but when the Big Ten said they were playing, he opted back in. The reigning Big Ten wide receiver of the year. All of that, and for weeks on end, Minnesota wasn't even ranked. And finally, they thrust them in there, and they've slowly worked their way up to 21 without playing a game. Severely disrespected. They were disrespected last year, in my opinion, despite the fantastic season. So you look at this game here. This is a semi-rivalry game, but a game that hasn't been played since 2017. A lot of questions for the Wolverines here. We knew coming into the season it was going to be a quarterback battle between Dylan McCaffrey and Joe Milton. Well, the coaching staff was given a little bit of a favor. They didn't have to make that big of a decision because McCaffrey chose to opt out. So it's the Joe Milton show. It's all Joe Milton when it comes to the success of Michigan this season. And he's a guy that a lot of people think could be the answer to Michigan's offensive struggles. 6'6", 240 pounds, got a heck of an arm. This could be the quarterback that Michigan's been needing for years on end now. Can he use his arm? Can he use it against a stingy Minnesota defense? And how will he play in really his first ever career start in a hostile environment in the first game of the season? All those things combined, a little sketchy for a Michigan offense that has struggled mightily under Josh Gaddis and has struggled mightily really under Jim Harbaugh. Also, let's keep in mind that Michigan will be without one of their leading wide receivers in Nico Collins, who's choosing to remain opt-out, choosing to stay out. And also, they have a very inexperienced offensive line, losing 4 of their 5 offensive line starters from 2019. All of that combined, you can expect some struggles, I think, offensively for Michigan in this game. Minnesota, again, 11-win season last year. They returned Tanner Morgan, one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. He completed 66% of his passes last year and had 30 touchdowns. It's really, really dang good. And while Minnesota loses a lot on both sides of the ball, you lose Tyler Johnson, you lose Antoine Winfield on defense. Those are huge losses and holes that are going to have to be replaced, and they won't be replaced immediately. You're going to see some pains on both sides of the ball in this game. Rashad Bateman is the key. He had over 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns last year. The fact that he chose to come back gives Minnesota a huge offensive boost because without him, Tanner Morgan was going to struggle when it came to pass catchers. So you look at that. Minnesota certainly, in my opinion, owns that offensive edge. Michigan may own that defensive edge with 6 returning starters, but let's keep in mind they also are losing one of their top cornerbacks, Ambry Thomas, who chose to opt out as well and did not choose to opt back in. Both of these teams will struggle early on in this game, but I like Minnesota too much in this one. I'm rowing the boat with P.J. Fleck and the Golden Gophers. They own the edge at quarterback. They own the edge really all together on offense. And this defense, despite losing so many big starters, they were a top 10 unit in the country last year. Expect them to flex their muscles a little bit against a Michigan offense that will struggle on the road in their season opener. Michigan will get better as the year goes on, but it's Minnesota that gets a season opening victory against a top 20 opponent. And maybe then they'll get a little respect put on their name. And then finally, wrapping it up, final big game of the weekend, the nightcap. Number 9 Cincinnati at number 16 SMU. This is big for so many reasons. Not just because it's a top 20 showdown, but because the winner of this becomes the front runner for that New Year's 6 bowl berth. Remember, the highest ranked Group of 5 conference champion goes to a New Year's 6 bowl game. Both of these teams are in the American Athletic Conference. There's a chance that both these teams could meet again in the American Athletic Conference championship game. But this game right here is going to give one of these teams some major separation, while the loser, the room for error, is very, very slim. Let's take a look at Cincinnati. They'll be taking the field for the first time in 3 weeks when they play in Dallas on Saturday night. You wonder, are they going to be a little bit rusty? They're going to be a little bit shaky. The offense been a little bit lackluster. Desmond Ritter's got to do better in terms of taking care of the football. SMU will be coming off 8 days of rest following their 3-point overtime victory against Tulane. The one complaint I have with SMU is they're great on offense. They're so electric. Their defense, decent at times. The problem is SMU has so much talent, so much speed, they probably should blow a lot of these inferior opponents out of the water. But it's never easy with Sonny Dykes and the Mustangs. Every time they have a game where they're a heavy favorite or you think they're going to pull away, they find a way to keep the game close. 7-point victory against Texas State in the season opener. 3-point victory against Memphis, a game they led by 21. They needed that game-winning field goal in that game against the Tigers. Then that 3-point victory against Tulane, one where it was sent to overtime, one where they probably shouldn't have even won in the first place. Sonny Dykes and his Mustangs have got to find a way when they get off to a fast start, when they get a decent lead, find a way to not relinquish it. Find a way to actually finish, and against decent opponents, finish the game and win convincingly because they haven't done that. But in this game against Cincinnati, you look, it's really a battle between SMU's prolific passing attack, one that's averaging 359.2 passing yards per game, behind Shane Buechele, who's already thrown for over 1,700 yards and 12 touchdowns this year. It's that type of offense going up against Cincinnati's defense, one that's allowing just 12.3 points per game and 171.7 passing yards per game. So as we mentioned kind of up here with Iowa State and Oklahoma State, North Carolina State and North Carolina, what's going to give here? Is Cincinnati's defense going to remain strong, or is SMU's passing attack going to wear them down? Keep in mind the Mustangs are still averaging over 200 rushing yards per game. Even if you slow down that passing attack, they can beat you on the ground as well. So what is going to give here? And in this game, I think the Mustangs get the major upset. Get a big upset over the Bearcats at home. For a lot of different reasons here. Cincinnati's offense simply is not built to go into a shootout. So if this game becomes high scoring, it benefits SMU. They're used to that. They're used to scoring a lot of points and trading score for score and playing fast. I don't know if Cincinnati's team is ready for that. I don't know if Cincinnati's team is ready for that with 3 weeks off. They've had a lot of time to prepare and watch film on the Mustangs, but they haven't hit the field against another opponent in 3 weeks, and that could pose an issue here on a road game at night. That's a major concern. I also look at SMU and how well their receivers have stepped up. They lose Reggie Robertson in that game against Memphis. It's always that next man up mentality. And you look at Rashee Rice last week against Tulane, 139 yards and 1 touchdown on just 7 receptions. That's unbelievable. SMU simply has too much talent, too much speed on the offensive side of the ball. This is the best offense that Cincinnati is going to have faced so far this season. I think the Mustangs wear them down. It is close. It is close, but I just don't know if the Bearcats' defense is enough in this one, especially with the game being on the road. I'm taking the Mustangs, and with that, it will be SMU that will become the front runner to maybe win the American Athletic Conference, but will be the front runner as the highest-ranked Group of 5 conference champion to make that New Year's 6 bowl game. SMU could very well propel themselves into a top 12, maybe right there at number 10 team in the country. Mustangs are legit, and you better watch out for them. So guys, top 5 games of the week. 4 ranked versus ranked matchups. The Big Ten is back. Michigan, Minnesota, the biggest one, but don't sleep on that Penn State, Indiana game. Wisconsin, Illinois play. You've got Ohio State, Nebraska, some plenty of other quality games out there, and that's just in the Big Ten. You know, we the past 5 weeks, we've seen 26 top 25 teams go down. We're guaranteed to see that bump up to 30. I guarantee it will be more than that by the time Week 8 is over. 2020, it's been a crazy, crazy year, not just in the world of college football, but everything else. But in college football, it is up there as one of the wildest years in history. We're going to continue to see history in the making by the end of Saturday night. So 5 biggest games up here. Don't miss any of them. We've got Game of the Week analysis on 2 of these games, 1 tomorrow, 1 on Friday. Make sure you don't miss it. It's going to be fantastic. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. If you love college football, this is the place for you. We cover it 24/7, 365. Videos nonstop. Stuff in the description non-stop. Check out our website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for our spread picks for these games over on thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for those. Sign up for the newsletter. Sign up for our Patreon. Again, if you love college football, the Gridiron Expert is the place for you. So once again, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more content coming your way soon, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.